Lesya Ukrainka. So sorry if I
no problem,
yeah,
Dyachkova.
that's correct. Yeah, okay.
Could you see my presentation now?
Yes, I see this full screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope the sound will be well. And
yes. Lisova Pisnya, да?
Lisova Pisnya.
Oh, okay.
In Ukrainian, Lisova Pisnya, the folk song. Thank you so much, and I started. Lesya Ukrainka is one of the central figures of European modernism and at the turn of the 20th century. She distinguished herself in various ways as a writer, poet, translator, playwright, folklorist, and active public figures. She is also one of the most widely translated Ukrainian authors. As a contemporary of Maeterlinck, Hauptmann, Stravinsky, and Cherlonis, Lesya Ukrainka belongs to the broader European mythological symbolism in early modern culture. Today, scholars approach her artistic and social activity from many points of view: feminist theory, postcolonial studies, intermedial research, contemporary theory practice. The bibliography of international studies of the folk song is longer than the drama itself. The text points to something essential. Lesya Ukrainka is not merely a Ukrainian classic, but an artist of the more widely European culture discourse. Lesya Ukrainka drama, the first song, is one of the most celebrated works. It's a story about the tragic love between a mystical forest maiden Mavka, comparable to Dryad, and young shepherd Lukash. From many critics today, the drama became an example of the synthesis of Ukrainian myth, European, particularly German-speaking mystical symbolism, poetry, and music on stage. In the 20th century, Mavka became one of the public best-loved characters in the Lesya Ukrainka works. Step by step, Mavka and Lesya Ukrainka became inseparable in the public imagination and began to merge into a single symbol. In the first song, music plays a symbolic role. Within the story, it awakens a sustains Mavka love. The sound of the sapilka becomes for her a source of inspiration, a force that shapes her inner life. In the first song, the magical power of music is embodied in Luka's instruments. Luka's sapilka's sound rouses Mavka from her winter sleep and sets love in motion. Lesya Ukrainka was expert in folk music. She collected folklore herself and also sang folk songs. Her sapilka was not just a folk instrument. It was a culture-charged symbol. In Ukrainian mythology, the sapilka is sometimes cut from a branch that grew from the blood of the innocent victim. So its music can tell people the truth about hidden crimes. Thus, in Ukrainian legend, the sapilka became a symbol of the human soul, and in general, it connects through the breath of the world of the dead and the living. This fragment from the film Yuri Ilyenko. I'm sorry. Okay. For more than a century, since the first book edition of the first song in Kiev in 1914, the drama has been published with an appendix of selection of folk melodies chosen by Lesya Ukrainka herself. The author considered it necessary to write these melodies to determine the place and nature of their performance in the dramatic course of events, to describe the timbre coloration and their significance in the integral creative idea of the drama. This is a rare phenomenon in world dramaturgy, and it requires special attention. In the orthograph of melody of collection, Lesya Ukrainka makes an interesting accent remark. See urgent, attention. All these melodies should be played solo, without orchestral accompaniment and without artificial arrangement. The writer also identified various emotional functions of the recommended melodies in the drama, for example, for mood, plaintively, dancely, etc. So it's the fourth song. Lesya Ukrainka applied an approach close to Wagner leitmotifs system. She selected 16 archaic folk melodies and served them as expressive, emblematic sync of the characters and state of nature. So many scholars, this fusion of myth and folk melodies invites a comparison with Wagner's idea of the Gesamtkunstwerk, the total work of art. Lesya Ukrainka strove for an organic unity of the word music and stage action. In this unit, music does not simply illustrate the text, but become the expressive and powerful dramaturgical component, revealing the psychological depth and mysterious meanings of events. Since Soviet times, stage production have accompanied Lesya Ukrainka works with very artistic interpretation or translation. Composers such as Mikhail Skarulsky and German Zhukovsky created ballets based on the forest song. Vitaly Kireiko composed an opera. Directors produced radio plays as well as cinematic and animated version. This interpretation reshaped the model of the total work art within opera, ballet, cinema, and animation. This research focuses on three screen interpretation with music by Ukrainian classical composers of the 20th century, Igor Shamo, Boris Boyevsky, and Evgen Stankovich. Even a primary comparison reveals clear difference. Each film carries its own emotional tone. Each reflects the social atmosphere of its time. The hopeful spring awakening of the 1960s, the growing disillusion of the 1970s, the prolonged stagnation of the 1980s. The analysis traced musical reference within the visual imagery of this film. I show how music shapes their artistic meaning. The study draws on contextual and comparative approaches. The film The Forest Song, directed by Viktor Ivchenko with music by Igor Shamo, premiered at the Alexander Dovzhenko Kiev Film Studio in 1960. It became one of the first large-scale cinematic interpretation of Lesya Ukrainka's symbolistic drama. Visually, the film party recalls the fairy tale adaptation popular in Soviet cinema, especially those associated with Alexander Rowe. At the same time, it preserves a distinct Ukrainian mythological perspective. The music of Igor Shamo functioned as a psychological commentary and art times in anticipating the dramatic action. The film builds its music imagery of international model, draw from symphonic and operatic tradition that acquired canonical status by the early 20th century, and later shaped and premiered Soviet cinema of the 1920s, 1950s. In Shamo's score, the intonation construction of the fairy tale world reveals an orientation towards the works of Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov. Such an orientation corresponds to broader techniques in Soviet cinema, and it's developed a tradition of screen adaptation of Nikolai Gogol Evening on and Far Near Dyachkova. The animated film The Forest Song 1976, directed by Alla Gracheva with music by Boris Boyevsky, premiered at the Kiev Nokov Film Studio and appeared in the Russian language. In the 1970s, Russian served as an all-union language of communication. At the same time, it functioned as a tool of cultural assimilation. Within this context, Lesya Ukrainka modernist text, rooted in national mythology and shaped by the symbolic system of the Ukrainian language, entreed a different artistic framework. This film visual solution demonstrated a striking autonomy. The imagery film aesthetic resonance with Ukrainian unofficial art of the 1960s, 70s, particularly in judgment with folk primitivism, collage, textured surface, and symbolic color. The score was composed by the well-known Ukrainian symphonic composer Boris Boyevsky. Boyevsky was also famous as the author of numerous popular hits of Ukrainian estrada. The composer created the film soundtracks, compiling a combination of Baroque rhetorical music figures and popular music motifs. In 1980, Yuri Ilyenko originally filmed his The Forest Song version in Ukrainian with music by Evgeny Stankovich. However, distributors released it in a Russian language double version. Within the film artistic system, Mavka undergoes a series of transformation. She appears as Dryad, as Ukrainian peasant woman, and figure reminiscent of Pre-Raphael's painting. At moment, she even evokes the image of the crucifixion. And the film central symbol emerges in the visual merging of Mavka with Lesya Ukrainka herself. This visual language is markedly polystylistic. The same principle continues in Stankovich's musical score. When the main leitmotif, a female vocalist, foundation of several levels. One of the levels is to recall the idea of song as a symbol of human destiny. And another note, it evokes the vocalist genre popular in Silver Age, associated with composers such as Renold Glier and Sergei Rachmaninoff. Conclusion and discussion. Thus, three-screen adaptation of Lesya Ukrainka, The Forest Song, allow us to trace how Wagner concept of the Gesamtkunstwerk transformed within a culture that resists an imperial worldview. Across the film, the idea of national myth gradually evolves into a personal myth, ultimately turning the figures of the poet herself into a symbolic center. This tendency becomes especially visible in the structure significant zone of film, architectonic, the opening frames and the finale. The 1961 adaptation presents several layers addings. In preserves the tragic conclusion of Lesya Ukrainka original plot, yet follow it with emotional, natural, lyrical semantic resolution. Finally, it's culminated in a solemn musical apotheosis of the love motive of Mavka and Lukash. Her music reference orient simultaneously of several cultural levels: mythological, social, collective, and biographical. The 1976 Russian language film foreground grief and despair. Its musical language omits the melodies and Lesya Ukrainka herself selected for the drama. In this sense, the film silences the poet's original music voice. Instead, it incorporates stylistic markers of European Baroque rhetorical alongside elements of Soviet popular and estrada music of the 1970s, 80s. I'm sorry. The 1980 adaptation reintroduced melodies from Lesya Ukrainka's own catalog, but shifts the musical emphasis towards different expressive material. The film opens with the word from Mavka's rule function as an epigraph, to die like a flying star. Through montage, the director associated the words with the image of Lesya Ukrainka herself, transforming the character at a race into a biographical metaphor. At the same time, the soundtrack juxtaposes individual grief, embodied in the female voice, with communal unit, signified by the bell.
Мертвий, як летюча зірка.
So I would be glad to continue our discussion in any format. The conversation about the forest song can never truly reach a final point. I see the next step in exploring what I call synonym text, works that are remarkably close in their narrative structure, yet radically distant in their cultural codes. In this perspective, I recognize a compile a parallel between Lesya Ukrainka, the Forest Song, and Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov opera Snegurachka, the Snow Maiden. Both works draw extensively of musical folklore material. Both develop Richard Wagner concept of Gesamtkunstwerk. This perspective opens a broader inquiry into the forest song and the Snow Maid coexist implicitly, competitively, or dialogically within the cultural space of the 20th century. Yes, the structure synonymal also enable a more complex dynamic. At certain historical moments, the two works could function as ideological substitutes with the social context, despite the fundamental difference in their cultural codes, which generated profoundly different aesthetic and social meanings. So my acknowledgement. I am grateful to the Army Forces of Ukraine for their protection and for making it possible to continue academic and artistic work in the challenging time. I sincerely thank the organizing committee of this symposium and all whose support of my idea and working. These my selected references. I can send a complete list via email. And thank you for your attention.